Cheers, guys. I'm your host, Epix. Welcome to another edition of the VR show. This is episode 4, and if I look a little happy, guys, it's because I'm relieved, not just that it's Gaming Friday, but that it's time for this show again. May talk about it one day, but the professional life, crappy, stressful, couple of words to kind of describe it. So very much looking forward to tonight. Lots to talk about, guys. Some really interesting news with regards to StarVR. Yeah, that company. We haven't heard from them for a long time, but holy crap, some pretty cool stuff. PlayStation VR. We're going to talk some games, a couple of real potential gems, and lots of other little tidbits. In fact, so much to talk about, guys. Let's cut the intro short and jump right into VR Roundup. When it comes to strange game shows, and we've talked about this topic before, quite a few countries can lay claim to some pretty bizarro world stuff as far as game shows are concerned. You know, the Tutti Fruttis of Germany, for example. Canada's got one or two themselves. But Japan, well, that's a country that can take game shows being strange to absolute levels of absurdity. For example, take a look at this. The gem known as human Tetris. And then we have human slip and slide. Now, if it sounds a little bit like, body part obsessions are a thing here, well, let's back up a little bit and take a look at this one, How to Escape a Fart. Now, if you're wondering what that strange substance is beside the individual on the screen, that's a fart. It's being monitored for disbursement. Japan is also a land wherein you can purchase various types of used, scented undergarments. So it was only a matter of time that VR would penetrate the market there. Now, we all probably remember that certain VR suit in Japan. Thankfully, that turned out to be an April Fool's joke. However, the latest VR craze is real, very real. It involves a person enjoying the experience, well, sitting down, putting their shoeless and sockless bare feet up while they relax with the HMD on head and see this massaging their feet. Oh, an anime character, when in reality, it's actually this massaging their feet. Let me know, guys, is this something that would work where you live? Next up, and for the purpose of complete transparency, because you have seen these in the background, I'm talking about my Cybusts. I chat with Alex, who is the CEO at Cybust, frequently, and in the interests, again, of transparency, I did not purchase the units. I do feature them on the show, but I did not purchase them. Alex also assisted me with the branding for my channel, and I think he did a bang-up, fantastic job on that. But this latest, and he hinted at it last week, well, this is one that I'm going to be paying for. A, because it's time, and B, because I couldn't imagine anything holding up the Pimax better than this. So this is the hinted picture. This is the revealed picture. Now, I personally love the design. It's got that same kind of angled poly line look that the Pimax, the StarVR, and some other modern HMDs have, where it's not just, the oval on your head. So this will definitely be a unit that I purchase. Now, I know people have joked in the past saying, look, you could use cardboard, you could use a mannequin head. Yes, and probably yes, but they probably wouldn't be as durable. They probably wouldn't look as good, but I will give it that they're probably cheaper. Well, the price is no more expensive for this new one. It's at that same price range. Remember, this is targeted as a premium high-end product. So if that's your thing, and if I'm going to invest in a Pimax, it will certainly be my thing. Just a really cool looking modern aesthetic that I think perfectly complements the upcoming 8K Pimax. It's going to be available starting October. And if you're interested, you can bookmark the storefront. I will include that in the description below. Next, FCC documentation recently filed by Samsung points toward a new Samsung Odyssey Plus model. Resolution and field of view don't appear to have changed. However, the documentation lists the following: a wider eye box, that's the internal portion that fits around the eyes, a wider nose portion, and some users complained about it being just a bit too tight on the schnoz. Anti-fog capability. This one huge for sweat monsters like me. I'm okay here with the central AC, but even some really high humidity days can definitely still be challenging. So that personally I think is a feature all HMDs should include. No word on price or specific launch date, but I'll keep you posted. Earlier this week, Sony announced that their PlayStation VR crossed 3 million units sold. Now, the Rift and Vive, which had an almost 6-month lead, are believed to each be at roughly 1 million units sold. Now, significantly lower than PlayStation VR's 3 million units. To put that into perspective, PlayStation 4 unit sales are at about 81 million. So that's roughly 4% of PlayStation 4 owners that have a PlayStation VR. And of specific note is that Sony has indicated these are units directly in consumer hands. So that's not units that are somewhere in the distribution supply chain channels. These are actual purchased units in people's hands. Along with those 3 million HMDs, Sony has stated that 21.9 million PlayStation VR games and experiences have been sold to date. That's an attach rate of about 7 games/experiences per unit. Not bad. Lastly, Sony shared their top 10 most played PlayStation VR games, and you know what? Say what you want. Take a look at the number 1 game. You can say Bethesda's been milking Skyrim for pretty much a decade now, and you would be absolutely correct, but look, it's paying off for them still. So can you blame them? Then, from VRgineers, the duo behind the VR Hero 5K headset, another new enterprise-focused 5K VR headset. This one they are calling XTAL. That's XT-AL. It's targeting enterprise and commercial clients. If you want one yourself, it's not cheap. This will probably change your mind pretty quick. $5,800 US. So unless you are, Mr. Moneybags, Richie Rich of early adopter fame, probably like me, you're going to pass. But if it is affordable, hey, it's probably going to be pretty damn impressive. Some features to set it apart from other enterprise units: a front-based leap motion tracking camera that comes with the unit. The rest, resolution 2560 by 1440 per eye, 170-degree field of view, voice macro-powered voice recognition, an auto-adjusting IPD, and OLED screen with custom proprietary non-Fresnel lenses. Very, very cool. Let you know as I find out more. A couple of weeks ago, Oculus retailed a Rift bundle, which included Marvel Powers United VR. That bundle sold for about $400 US, and it was much like the Rift and Touch bundle that's available elsewhere. So that's 2 touch controllers, the Rift, and 2 cameras for tracking. Well, while supplies last, Best Buy is going to offer that same bundle $50 US less. So Best Buy for $350 US while supplies last, you can get this Marvel Powers United VR bundle. On the gaming front, Firewall 0 Hour. This one, definitely a looker. It's going to be released on PlayStation VR this August the 28th. To me, the game has very much a PC Rainbow Six look. Now, no sooner did I think that than, well, the other reviews I started reading mentioned it themselves. So pretty much universally accepted, it has that Rainbow Six kind of look. As for the feel, we'll have to wait and see. Like Rainbow Six, also, if we're talking the style playbook, The gameplay playbook, this one also no respawn, so if you die, well, you're basically going to be viewing the remainder of the game through security cameras scattered throughout the 9 different levels. There's 2 modes of gameplay, training and contracts. You can play either solo or co-op. When you play solo, you can play against a team of AI players, or you can do co-op with your buddies against, again, a group of AI players. Contracts utilizes that team dynamic where 2 teams of 4 are pitted against each other on one of 9 different maps. Now, what's a bit odd and a negative to me is that you're required to have PlayStation Plus to play both co-op, training, and contract missions. Now, I'm a fan of PlayStation Plus, and I believe it delivers value, but I do not think it should be required to play games. I think that's ridiculous and just absolutely not necessary. This upcoming tongue-in-cheek VR stealth game, clearly taking inspiration from spy comedy films like Austin Powers, The Naked Gun. Now, Upload VR has an article, and in that article they state that it has a bit of a budget cuts feel aesthetically, and just based on what I'm seeing, I would agree. The developer Catland, CEO there, Tommy Toka, had this to say in a statement: "Armed with a shrink ray, you can shrink and dip Soviet soldiers into paper shredders and make them run in a hamster wheel. Or shrink yourself to get past opponents, just don't get stomped." There's no firm release date other than the vague sometime in 2018, but we do know that it's going to support the Rift, the Vive, as well as the various Windows units. Let's slow things down a little bit, guys. Dig a little deeper into this next story, StarVR. The announcement blew me away in terms of the specs, and I'm excited about a lot of stuff. I'm excited, obviously, about the Pimax 8K and pretty much any future higher resolution, better field of view type unit. Well, this StarVR, it kind of reads like a wish list of the best feature-wise. So check out what they announced recently at the SIGGRAPH 2018 with regards to specs. So first up, a new AMOLED display. It's got a resolution of 1830 by 1464 in each eye. This I love. It uses an RGB strip subpixel structure. Now what that does, and if it kind of sounds like it makes pixels smaller, then you would be correct. It's basically there to kind of minimize the screen door effect further. So that's the type of technology, and that's what I'm mainly excited about with the StarVR. It's utilizing a lot of technology that's come up by other developers and other vendors. And, these aren't technologies that were just cast to the wayside. They were incorporated, they're shared, and we're seeing this stuff, moving forward in these units. So fantastic to see that. Also nice to see the very unappealing 62 hertz of the original StarVR up to 90 hertz refresh rate. So that brings it more in line with the other units. As stated, it supports Steam VR Tracking 2.0, so pretty much what the Vive has built in. That provides, of course, for up to 10 by 10 meter tracking. If you're not sure about meters, that's 33 by 33 feet of tracking real estate. Very nice. Now, another fantastic feature, and I'll get back to fantastic in a second, is the inclusion of foveated rendering, as well as software-based IPD. That, of course, the interpupillary distance adjustment mechanism, that is automated through the software, which is great. Now, I used the word fantastic talking about foveated rendering because to me, it is such an amazing technology. If your only experience with foveated rendering has been that Robinson the Journey game, well, you could be mistaken for kind of not, being too excited about it. And I got to admit, it worked in the title, but it's also very noticeable. The area that's using foveated rendering is surrounded by an area that clearly isn't. And that technique is only improving as, developers learn to work with it. But where it really shines is when it gets paired with other technology like IPD, artificial intelligence, eye tracking, for example. You know, being able to have conversations with artificial intelligence players and have them know, you know, that you're nervous and not making eye contact, all that kind of stuff possible with techniques like eye tracking and, of course, foveated rendering for improving performance. That becomes so important as we kind of move. Sure, GPU speeds are getting better, PC, CPU speeds are getting faster, but we need other types of technologies to also chip away at performance. And foveated rendering is absolutely one of those that's going to allow us to experience those nicer resolutions, crisper displays, less screen door effect, etc., and not take huge performance hits. So fantastic. Weight-wise, 450 grams, not obscenely heavy, not super light either, but not a bad weight. Where it gets you though, and if you're thinking, wow, this thing sounds great, where can I get one? Let's talk price. And this is where things sour. Now, I'm going to reference back to the other 5K kind of headset that I just talked about. That had a sticker price of $5,800 US. So keep that in mind, because StarVR says their range ultimately is going to be between $2,000 and $10,000 US. Pretty safe to say it's probably not in this range, the 2 to 5. It's more likely going to be 5 to 10,000, and suddenly I've tapped out because that is way too rich for me. And I consider myself a pretty excited, enthusiastic early adopter. But it was interesting. Rowdy, another VR YouTuber, he tweeted asking what would be your kind of upper price point for some of this new tech. For me, I discovered that was about $1,500 US. After that, better be damn good if I'm gonna, ante up, because that's expensive. So probably not one I'm gonna get for a long while. But let me know your thoughts, guys, in the comments below. Is this something you would purchase in that price range, given the specs? The Quadro processors 10, 15 years ago were a line of processors that took a different path from kind of the rasterized rendering cards that we use for first-person gaming, etc. They went down the path of optimizing drivers for CAD, for 3D Studio Max, Maya, etc. They were more kind of workstation multimedia cards than gaming cards. Often the same hardware, but from a driver point of view, function differently. Well, enter the Quadro RTX. So like those, rendering is kind of its forte. Only this time, it's ray tracing. And ray tracing is impressive. You've probably seen ray tracing, and you probably didn't know. Or you've heard of things that sound familiar to ray tracing, like ray casting, which is what Wolfenstein and a bunch of other non-true 3D engine games used. It's kind of the poor cousin to ray tracing because it only deals with specific portions for rendering. A true ray tracing, what it does is imagine a high resolution picture and all the pixels that make up that picture. Now imagine rays of light, so lines coming in from every possible direction. How they would react, how light would react as it hits objects within that picture. So if it sounds like something that would be very complicated, it is. It's very computationally intensive, meaning your computer really has to crunch this thing to hell. And the end result was that a lot of ray tracing pictures in the old days could take days to render, hours, minutes, not 60 frames per second. And that's another thing this Quadro is kind of aiming at, is real-time ray tracing. Not for games right away, but production multimedia environments where they need faster ray tracing result. But in the future, we might get to that point. The other thing that this card does well is virtual reality. So it's got a couple of features. Let's take a look. So Nvidia acquired a ray tracing company back in 2008 by the name of Rayscale. And they showed some initial demos a couple of years later in 2010, real-time ray tracing demos. Well, now not only can they do that, but the VR stuff, for example, they've got variable rate shading, multi-view rendering, which is huge for the stereoscopic view of VR, and VRWorks Audio, which is going to improve audio capabilities within virtual reality environments. Initial specs for the VR feature-rich Quadro RTX line, pretty damn robust. The higher-end card, the 8000 for example, 48 gigs of memory, 4,608 CUDA cores, 576 tensor cores, and capable of using NVLink to access an additional 96 gigs of memory. Finally, you've got the ray tracing at 10 gigaраys per second. The 6000, essentially the identical same specs for everything, except the memory is halved. But the ray tracing, the gigaраys the same, the NVLink the same. It's just the onboard memory is halved and what it has access to. Whereas the low-end 5000 unit, not only does it have less memory, its ray tracing isn't as fast, and it has less overall cores. So definitely a card to keep our eyes out on. It'll be interesting to see what these are going to be used for. My guess is probably commercial VR arcade environments. I mean, can you imagine the potential? If we could get back to that sweet spot where arcades were ahead of where consoles and home computers were at, that in itself would be a compelling reason for VR arcades. Not the mom and pop shops, but those commercial theater-style venues where the experience that you get there is like 10 times better than what you'd have at home. Very cool. Well, guys, here we are. Last story. This would normally be the VR rant, but as you probably guessed, based on when you're watching this video, I was late again, but I am getting faster, and it's getting more streamlined. The reason I haven't removed it to, the banner tagline to a Saturday release is the goal is to get it out on Gaming Friday, and I will hit that within the next few weeks. This time around, same thing, but I get a tweet this morning at 6 a.m. from a viewer to the channel, Trev Nanders, and he's got a link to an application called Reality Blender that does a neat twist on mixed reality. And I'm not talking the mixed reality that Microsoft borrowed and is using as a synonym for virtual reality. I'm talking about mixed reality like some gamer YouTube content creators use, where you are in the virtual reality gaming world. Swivivor was an early adopter of that for the VR channels. And you basically, as a viewer, see him in the game world, as opposed to my gaming videos, which will be resurrected shortly, probably next week. I tend to use the green screen and I'm superimposed onto the game world. And then the third option would be Alanady and some others, where you see them in their surroundings as a bordered picture-in-picture box on the video, and then the game world around it. What this app does is pretty ingenious. It's kind of a twist on that mixed reality that Swivivor uses. So what it does using a chroma key is you sit at your cockpit, and that's really what it's designed for, is cockpit-style games. If you had a racing cockpit or a flight one for Elite, probably even better, but let's assume it's at the desk. What you do is you crop the view to basically just your hands on the flight stick and throttle if you're playing Elite Dangerous, and you're going to see a video that I'm playing here in the little picture-in-picture window on this video, which is going to show Elite Dangerous. It shows, I believe it's Project Cars, and you'll see what I'm describing. So you crop that image. So again, if it's Elite Dangerous, you've got one hand on the flight stick, one hand on the throttle, and you chroma that basically and adjust the settings till you get to a point where it's not jarring and, breaks the fourth wall. It's got to be kind of pleasing to the eye, and thankfully, as you can also see in the video, you can tweak that. So the end result is you get your actual hands moving the throttle or flight stick, the racing wheel if it's a racer game, and damn if that isn't such a simple concept, but pretty damn cool. At its most basic, it might not be that immersive, but you could get so creative with this. For example, you could totally nerd it up, and yeah, I'm going to do this when I build the racing cockpit, and use actual racing car gloves, Pair that with one of the more robust and real-looking racing wheels, and man, would that not be immersive. So gonna dig into this program a little bit better. I don't know what all the limitations are. Hell, I don't even know what the negatives are at this point because I've only really watched the video and skimmed through the stories, but I did want to mention it. So Trev Nanders, thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. But the potential, right? Elite Dangerous, another game that I mentioned that they show. Part of what made it such a powerful immersion experience for me is having my hands in the game match what they're doing in real life. Only now you can actually see your real hands, which is pretty damn cool. I mean, you could get to the point where you create artificial props and sets. It's really only limited by your resources that you're willing to throw at it and your imagination, but some really cool potential with this app. So check that out, guys. It's called Reality Blender. I'm going to have a link to it in the description and probably do a more in-depth on it next week during the VR XP segment. So very cool. For the third time, thanks again, Trev. Really appreciate it. Well, guys, this is normally where I would say enjoy your game on Friday, but let's be real. It's Saturday, so enjoy your Saturday. Have a friggin' amazing weekend, guys, and we will talk to you guys again soon. And as always, cheers.